Welcome back to another episode of the Crush the Rush podcast. This week, we are diving into family planning and how it can impact your business. And many of you have asked how we have juggled everything. And the truth is that we don't juggle everything, but also the way that we have been able to juggle a lot successfully is through communication and prioritizing life first, going back to that life priorities first business model. So today I'm sharing 3 key things that we do as a family that keeps us organized and helps us stick to our individual goals. So I hope you stick around to see how we make it work. Welcome back to our pep talk, which has now been moved from Fridays to Mondays, which I'm so excited about because the goal is to really kick off your week and help you by giving you tangible tips that you can use right now. So today actually is a really fun episode because a question that I get asked a lot is how do we incorporate our family into our business model? And one of the things that I really leaned into at the end of 2024 was this whole life priorities based business model, which for us started out as me leaving my corporate job so that we could have more freedom as a family, which then led to quarterly travel and really being intentional with how we're spending our time, which has now led to designing our business so that it basically runs from September through May. Doesn't mean that I'm not working a little bit over the summer or the holidays, but today is actually my first day back since December 23rd. Like, whoa, that's crazy to me. Obviously, I'm writing this ahead of time, but the thought of not starting our new year until mid-January, makes my brain a little bit fuzzy. So as I was preparing for our trip and taking some time off this January, I got a lot of questions about how we plan as a family. So I thought I would break it down on what that looks like. So to start, we always have a quarterly plan, and I cover this in episode 386, but this is really, really key to the whole thing functioning. So as a family, we think about what do we want to do first, and then layer in our business goals on top of that. And it doesn't mean that it's perfect and it always works the way that we think it's going to work, but we're at least being intentional about where we want to spend our time and what our time looks like. So once we kind of have that in place, it becomes rinse and repeat. And if you listen to last week's episode, I shared how we plan our content. And while this necessarily isn't a family affair, it's mostly me. Between the quarterly plan and the monthly content, I have a guide for what is happening. And I'm not waking up in the morning being like, oh my gosh, I only have 4 hours when the girls are at school. What am I supposed to do? So this has been a really big change because I'm able to be really consistent with it. And I'm able to see the fruits of our labor from both a revenue perspective, but also just in terms of actually having white space and capacity. So the biggest change in our business in terms of making more revenue, which supports our family, actually came when I started talking about it more every day. And so that's actually the first step into things that we incorporate into our sort of family business model. And I joke when I first started my business 5 years ago, which is so crazy to me, I would hide out in the office and I would work as much as I could. And then I would never tell anyone what I was working on. And so this whole talking about what you're doing and including friends and family and your spouse was a huge step for me. But a lot of times I actually think it is the most important step. We're not supposed to do this in a box. And I think the biggest thing for me was learning, I don't have to always be in a box. I can be in the mom box and the business owner box at the same time. I can be in the business owner box and the wife box at the same time. I don't have to pick one box. And so this was a really big step, a big aha moment for me. And so today we do 3 things every week that really help us focus on this life priorities first business model. The first is Sunday planning. You guys know I talk about this all the time. I always do Sunday planning by myself using the planner, which just came out with a brand new cover. So you can grab that at hollymariehaynes.com/planner. P.S. We talk about this life priorities first business model in the planner, and we've actually tied podcast episodes to different pages in the planner so that you can learn it. But every Sunday afternoon, regardless if you have the planner or not, I sit down and I go through what's coming up for the week. And then the key is we go through it as a family. So this usually happens at dinner or in the afternoon. But what we have started doing, which has been really fun, is putting a chalkboard in our kitchen. And then the girls take turns writing what we have going on. So if you're a new listener this year, I have twin girls who are 11. We've done this for a while. So they've done this since they were little, but they take turns writing on the chalkboard what's going on for the week. And we write down what everyone is doing, not just them. So if they know, like if it's a big week for me, what days are big days? I know if they have big things going on, what's going on for them, and we talk about it. So sometimes, as an example, and I know this off the top of my head because usually they have dance 2 or 3 times a week. So if we know that it's a dance day and I have like a lot of podcasts going on and Scott has some appointments, then we can talk about it as a family and say, okay, we need to be prepared for Wednesday. Like we're all going to be tired on Wednesday. So we're going to make dinner the night before. We're going to have leftovers. Like, hey, what are you guys excited about eating? And so this has been a real game changer because we're anticipating what's coming and we're involving them as being a part of it. That's number one. The second thing that we do is dinner conversations. So I haven't shared this a lot publicly, but I have a very complicated family history. That's what my therapist says. My parents divorced when I was in high school. My dad remarried and moved to Florida. And so I was raised mostly in my teenage years by my mom. And then my dad passed away when I was 25 from brain cancer. And so there's a lot to unpack there. I'm sharing this because through all of my therapy sessions as an adult, I used to always say like, hey, I had a really normal childhood, I think. But it turns out I never remember eating dinner as a family. I think sometimes I just block things out, but that's probably like another episode for another day. So we'll just leave it at that for now. But in our house, family dinners have become really, really important to me. And so at the family dinner table, and I promise you this has something to do with business, we do a round table every single night. So my goal is that we are sitting down, eating dinner as a family every night, at least most nights, and we switch it up. So sometimes we do peak and pit, which is like the high and low of your day. Sometimes we do table questions. If you search it on Amazon, they're like these really cool cards that like prompt conversations. So it's not just like, how was your day? And then, the kids look at you and you're like, fine. And then you don't really get an answer. Like these are prompting you questions. But we always talk about like what we did during the day. So my girls hear, hey, I recorded podcasts, or I had a client over to work, or we worked through our finances. And we actually talk about it every single day. So now what's cool is they actually start asking like, hey, mom, what did you do today? Did you have any podcast interviews? Did a client come over? Did you and dad go for a walk? Like they're very in tune with what we're doing now, which is really cool. So don't get me wrong. I'm not cooking every night, but 99% of the time we sit down and we chat about what's going on in our business, our life, etc. So everyone is aware. And it's really amazing the feedback that we've gotten, even if you don't want it, or it's not what you think, because we're talking about things that are happening and we're not doing it in a box, right? So my box now is everything is in one box instead of having these like separate boxes. So that goes to the third piece of this. And I actually have started including my girls in work sessions with me. Now they're a little bit older now, so it's a little bit easier, but I used to think that I had to have pockets of time, again, where I could only be a mom or I could only be a business owner, but that just didn't work. And so now we like blend it all together. So if the girls get home from school and I have a few emails left, and I know if I intentionally answer them, then I'm going to be able to focus more later on, then I'll just include them in my work. So I'll be like, hey, bring your books. Let's get our reading done while I'll answer these emails, or let's get your homework done while I do this XYZ thing. We set a timer and we work on it together. So it's kind of like they have become my accountability partners. Like we both want to be done in a certain time. We have a certain time that we're going to do it, and then we're going to accomplish it. And so Scott and I have also been able to do the same thing. So we have planned meetings where we talk about like finances and marketing and weekly things, but they're put on the calendar just like they are in any other business world. And the only difference is sometimes they're Sunday morning when we're in our pajamas, and that's totally okay. But we're sort of bringing everyone into the mix. And that's been really, really cool to see the maybe outcome of that, because we're all working on our goals together. And everyone in the family knows like, hey, if this goes well, then this is the outcome of that. If it doesn't go well, then this is what we're going to need to do. And so it's just like a very open relationship. And so I set a lot of boundaries on how I spend my time. But when I was able to open myself up and talk about what I do and work without worrying about when it was being done or if, the girls were home and I actually had my computer open, like, oh my gosh, like that has changed because everyone is invested and we've set some boundaries and these really cool, like, I don't want to call them rules, but just like traditions that we've started inside our every sort of day and every week where we're all super invested. And I know that the girls can see the benefits and I hope that you can see it even from like an external position where you don't have to just be in one box at a time. So I hope this helps you. It's a little more of a personal episode, but I've gotten the question a lot. And hopefully these are things that you can implement with your family, with your partners, with your friends. It works for everyone to just be more open about what you're doing and thinking about opening your box and being able to put a lot in the box and not just having to work in silos. So I'm super curious. Do you plan as a family, with your spouse, with your partner? If this type of content is helpful for you, just send me a DM because I would love to know what you think of this episode. And I promise that doing it together is way more fun.